As your average UFC fan here today, and today I'd like to talk about Conor McGregor. Where can I go? Where can I start? This isn't going to be a rant about Conor. These are going to be the top 5 fights you'll possibly see Conor McGregor in within the next year, barring he doesn't get suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission for what happened with the Khabib fight afterwards. Conor ended up slapping one of Khabib's trainers, and they ended up coming at him. Guy jumped over the cage, punched Conor. Big altercation. I'm sure they're going to look at it all in slow-mo and in stills and see exactly what happened and get statements of witnesses and all this. But it's Conor McGregor and it's the UFC, so I got a feeling he's probably going to get off light. Probably a light suspension, if any suspension at all, or fine. So these are top 5 fights that I not so much I'd like to see Conor McGregor in. I'd like to see him in a few of them, but the top 5 fights that I think he could be in, I think that the UFC would make, and what would make sense for the UFC to make. So I'd like to talk a little bit about Conor first, about his record, about what he's done, and some notes about him and stuff like that. So when I'm talking about the guys he's fighting, you can compare what his record and what he's done to what they've done, and reasons why he's fighting them. I'll state while I'm naming the list. So Conor McGregor's overall past 5 fights have been he lost to Khabib by neck crank. Yeah, his last loss was to Khabib in a very controversial fight where he talked a lot of smack about Khabib. Went really way too far with talking about his religion, about his family, about how he was brought up, how he's smelly Dagestani Muslim rat and all that. Like I say, really classless. Went way too far with it. And his overall record actually is 27-4. Just so people know, he's 27-4, and all 4 of his losses are submissions, which he tapped, which is why he gets the knock as a quitter. Even though he has 27 losses, and most of them are dominant wins. Especially his title fights in Cage Warriors and in UFC. If you go watch his title fights in Cage Warriors, he dominated those two. His last fight was to Khabib. He lost by neck crank. His fight before that, he absolutely dominated Eddie Alvarez in lightweight title fight. His first fight at lightweight in the UFC, and it was for the title after he won the featherweight title. Absolutely dominant performance. Took Eddie Alvarez out like it was nothing. Walked him down on the feet. Did everything he said he was going to do in the press conference and more. The most dominant title defense I've ever seen. And he basically made Eddie Alvarez his bitch. So yeah, Eddie got owned. 2 fights prior to this, back to back. His first fight against Nate Diaz was at welterweight. After that lightweight title fight, he jumped up to 170. Fought Nate Diaz, was dominating the fight for the first 8 minutes. Got caught with a nice 1-2 and a nice big left hand that rocked him, stumbled him. He took a few more shots, backed up, tried to get out of it, tried to escape the round. He looked kind of gassed, so even if he had to go to the third, I don't know if he would have survived that, especially with his track record and his cardio as it is. He ended up getting taken down. And like within 10 seconds after getting taken down, 1 or 2 shots from Diaz, he rolls over, exposes his neck. Diaz grabs the rear naked choke, and game over. Conor taps. But he rematched that fight within 6 months later. He was really hyped up about the fight. He talked a lot of shit. And going into this fight, a lot of people were looking forward to it. The first fight, people thought he was just going to smoke Diaz. So people were looking forward to it where it was a Conor fight, but it didn't get as much hype. But where he lost to Diaz after being on a dominant run he was on and all the shit he talked, people were really into this fight. And ended up breaking the UFC record. Brock Lesnar and George St. Pierre's UFC 100 record. Well, Brock Lesnar's, when he fought, I think it was Mir maybe, and George St. Pierre fought on the same card against Jake Shields. It ended up breaking that record, the UFC 100, from years and years before that. For pay-per-view buys and attendance, if I'm not mistaken, but definitely for pay-per-view buys. And Conor won that fight by decision. Very disputed decision. A lot of people say Diaz won, but I think Conor won. I can't see how you can do nothing for the first round and a half and come on strong for another round and a half and then pretty much do the same thing, nothing in the fifth except get a lazy takedown at the end and expect to win the fight. Especially after being dominated so much in those first 8 minutes, dropped 3 times. You got dropped 3 times in the fight. I cannot see how he has a case for winning that fight, but that's just my opinion. And I'm a fan of both fighters. Conor not so much lately because he's been fucking really douchey, but I'm still a fan of the guy fighting for sure. And his win prior to those 4 fights was another dominant title fight. His own 4th title fight in the UFC, but the most dominant one. He flattened Jose Aldo 13 seconds, knocked him out cold, dropped him with a big overhand, with a big left hand while Aldo was coming with the right. Dropped him, KO'd him 13 seconds. Dominant featherweight champ, was featherweight champ for 8 years, 10 years, but he only defended like 8 times. So if you add it up, he didn't even defend once a year. So yeah, I like Aldo, but he's a bit overrated there. But Conor did drop him after nobody could drop him for 8 years. Dominant. He only had one loss prior to that. Conor did everything he said he was going to do. He literally said in the press conference, I'm going to get you hyped up, so pumped up, you're going to step in, expose that chin, and that's exactly what happened. Who'd think it would be that quick? Set a UFC record for the fastest title win ever, and I've got a feeling it's going to stand till this day. Me personally, I just think that. Some notes about him. He was the first man to ever hold 2 belts consecutively. A lot of people dispute it because he got stripped like pretty much like a couple weeks after of the featherweight title, and then he ended up getting stripped of the lightweight title because he went and fought Floyd Mayweather in boxing, and he lost that fight, but he did pretty good for an MMA fighter crossing over. Some people say Floyd carried him. Some people say he didn't. I'm more of an MMA expert, not expert, but more of an MMA person than a boxing expert, but from what I've seen, Conor did pretty good, and Floyd definitely didn't want to get hit with that uppercut he got hit with. You look at it in slow-mo, fast motion, real time, anything, he smoked him with a really nice uppercut, probably one of the nicest shots Floyd's ever took in a fight ever. And what else is he done? He's the biggest draw in MMA by far. Since he's come into MMA, he's been the biggest draw, and he still is the biggest draw in MMA. He's really controversial. He's had some court cases for throwing a dolly through the window, for hitting a guy in a pub. He's jumped over the cage before and slapped the referee after it, and he's done a lot of controversial things. Really, really big name, and these are why I'd like to discuss the top 5 fights he should have, because Conor's a big name in MMA. And if there's anybody people always talk about, whether they hate him or love him, they're always talking about Conor McGregor. Like John Jones, GSP, all those guys are big names, but eventually, if they're not around long enough, their name just drifts away. You don't hear about them as much. But Conor McGregor's always relevant. He could be boxing, he could be home in his fucking diapers eating Lucky Charms, sitting in his underwear eating Lucky Charms, and people would still be talking about him. Whether they're hating him or loving him, people just love talking about this guy. I don't know what it is, but they just do. I guess it's not just because he's such a great fighter, it's because of the shit he talks and the way he carries himself and stuff. Some people are like obsessed with him. Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor has to be the first fight. Trilogy has to happen first. Everybody knows it. The second fight already broke the pay-per-view records. A lot of people are going to say Khabib's on this list, of course, but Conor doesn't deserve a rematch in that fight. He lost. He didn't get smashed him out like Joe Rogan said, in my opinion, but he lost unanimously. He got neck cranked in the 4th round. He tapped out, first toilet fight he ever lost in UFC, and he did nothing to show or warrant that he deserves a rematch in that fight. So yeah, that's the Khabib fight I'm talking about right now. But the Nate Diaz trilogy, it needs to happen. Their first 2 fights were super close. Yes, Conor got choked out in the first one. It's because he got caught. But the second fucking fight, he showed he knows how to fight Nate Diaz. He almost knocked him out a couple times. He dropped him bad a couple times. It was a great fight. I think it was fight of the year, maybe. It had to be up there for fight of the year. I think it actually was fight of the year. Great welterweight war, and this time I'd like to see him fight at lightweight. Winner gets Khabib, winner gets to fight for the title, because Nate Diaz has some beef with Khabib now too, and he's always talking about how we should be the best. And some notes about Nate Diaz: his last 5 wins are, or his last 5 fights, he got a loss to McGregor in his last fight. He got a win to McGregor by rear naked choke in the second fight. He got a win over Michael Johnson, dominant win where he boxed Michael Johnson up. He won that by decision though, but he still boxed the head right off him. He got win over half, or loss over half of Dos Anjos. It was a leg kick clinic by Dos Anjos. He beat Diaz by decision. Diaz staying in that fight just showed how tough Nate Diaz is. I always get him mixed up. Nate Diaz is, because he can take it to the chin. He can get hit all day and not drop, but his leg looked like mincemeat at the end of that fight, and he was still going, still wanted to fight. And he was still disputing the loss, I'm pretty sure, because that's just what Diaz do after fights. They seem to make excuses. And Gray Maynard, big win over Gray Maynard, where he TKO'd Gray Maynard, absolutely boxed him up, was his win before that. His notable wins are over Conor McGregor, of course, Gray Maynard, Donald Cerrone, Jim Miller. There's a couple other ones, but those are the 4 big notable names I can think of. Overall MMA record 19-11, and if him and Conor fought again, I'm picking Conor, because Conor displayed he's a better striker. If he could just get the cardio up a little bit, he could absolutely work Diaz, because he can stuff his takedowns. Diaz couldn't get a single takedown in either fight really until he got Conor hurt in the second fight, until it was the very end. No time left, no worries, no scared at the end of the second fight. So I'd be picking Conor by TKO or by decision in that second fight for sure. He just needs to work on his gas tank. He really needs to work on his gas tank. And he needs to work on stop being such a douchebag, but that's outside the octagon. My second fight has to be Khabib, whether he deserves a rematch or not. For the UFC, that would do huge numbers. They could do it in Russia. There's 100 million people in Russia. They could do it in like a soccer stadium, have the biggest crowd they've ever had for a UFC fight. have a crazy event, lead with so much hype up to it. You know Conor's going to talk a bunch of shit, but this time he can't go as far as he did. There's no way he can go as far as he did. He already got smashed by this dude. So it'd be very interesting to see how Conor acts. Because when he lost to Diaz, he lost, but he had a claim like, oh, I was beating you, you got lucky. Excuse me, folks. I was beating you and you got lucky. But in the Khabib thing, he can't say anything. He can't say, oh, I was beating you, you got lucky, oh, I won a round. He only won the third round because Khabib just coasted and took it off because he wanted to give it all he had in that fourth round. And it was so clear because he took Conor out like nothing in the fourth round. And he smashed the guts out of Khabib in the second round. Out of Conor in the second round. He had Conor up against the cage, pinned against the cage, just beating him down, owning him. First round, he was all over him with top control. Not so much ground and pound, but just holding him down, transitioning, controlling the round, getting all the points, winning the round 10-9 for sure. And in the fourth round, he got that neck crank, choked him out. He pretty much did everything he said he was going to do, except he lost the round in some judges' eyes. Khabib's last 5 fights, he got the win over Conor McGregor. He got a win over Al Quinta. Al Quinta did very good against him, actually, for a guy who was fighting on short notice. He got a really dominant win over Edson Barbosa. Edson Barbosa decided to survive the decision like Al Quinta did, but Edson Barbosa took a far worse beating. Khabib absolutely mauled him. He literally did maul him. He was all over him from beginning to end, ground and pound clinic. Beautiful fight. If you love MMA, watch that fight. His next win was against Michael Johnson. It was a controversial win. Not so much controversial, but it showed people Khabib's human because he took a big shot in the first round, stumbled around a bit, but he recovered. By the time the second round came, he had Johnson gassed. He was on top of him, beating the crap out of him, and Kimura and won by Kimura. And his win after that is against Dan Hooker, and he won by TKO. And I didn't see that fight personally, so I can't really give you a pile of notes on it, but Khabib won that by TKO, and I'm assuming it was by ground and pound, no Khabib. And his notable wins, Conor McGregor, Al Quinta, Rafael dos Santos, and Gleison Tibau. Those are the 4 biggest notable wins I could think about for him. 27-0, undefeated, only ever lost a round. Great matchup that would be. Next is the fight out of all these fights I would like to see the most personally because I love this guy. I'd like to see him beat Conor. I think Conor would beat him just because of the style and just because he has that knack of losing in his biggest fights. He'll win all these like big fights, and then when he gets to the big fight, the title fight or the fight everybody wants to see, like against Nate Diaz, he'll lose it. But it's a guy who I'd like to see beat the brakes off Conor like he did Alex Hernandez in his last fight. One of my personal favorites. Donald Cerrone, overall record 20 wins, 3 losses, 0 whatever. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong record. Overall record, 35 wins, 11 losses, 1 no contest. Sorry about that. I got his record mixed up with Max Holloway's record. Sorry about that. That was Donald Cerrone's record. Is 35 wins, 11 losses, 1 no contest. Most wins in UFC. If I'm not mistaken, most finishes in the UFC too. Don't hold me on that one, but definitely most wins for sure. Notable wins: Matt Brown, Ben Henderson, Eddie Alvarez, Jim Miller, Edson Barbosa, Jeremy Stevens. The list goes on. Beautiful. Last 5 fights, he bet Alex Hernandez, smoked him like a video game the way he was throwing those combos. You gotta love Cowboy, man. Cowboy puts it together like nobody else, and he's so entertaining when he fights. He just is chin down, going at him all the time. Sometimes he's happy-go-lucky, like in the Matt Brown fight, but if he wants to be happy-go-lucky, hugging Cowboy and stuff, he's gonna fuck you up because he did it against Yancy Medeiros and Matt Brown. He head kicked KO Matt Brown like 2 minutes after they hugged going into the round. So Cowboy's a savage if he wants to be all buddy-buddy with him. His last 5 fights, 1 over Alex Hernandez by head kick, 1 over Mike Perry, showed Mike Perry what's up after Mike Perry talked a little bit of shit too. Hernandez went way too far with the shit talking. I love seeing Hernandez get smoked. I don't even want to talk about the guy. I don't deserve to be talked about. Leon Edwards, he lost to Leon Edwards. That was a welterweight fight. These last 3 are welterweight fights. He had a bit of a rough stint at welterweight, but he started off really good against Rick Story and Matt Brown. He lost Leon Edwards by decision. He won over Yancy Medeiros, TKO round 1, and he lost to Darren Till, TKO round 1, in a big fight. A lot of people watched the Darren Till fight. I watched it live. I didn't know what to expect from Darren Till because I didn't watch a lot of him going into the Cowboy fight. I knew he had a big left hand, but that's the fight that got Darren Till on the map for sure. Cowboys put a lot of people on the map with wins and losses. Just an impressive fights. He always seems to be in impressive fights. He really put Eddie Alvarez on the UFC map. Eddie Alvarez was like well known. They used to call him the Underground King, but when he fought Cowboy and lost a close decision to him, everybody was saying Eddie Alvarez's name after that, and Alvarez got really hot after that, ended up going on to be UFC lightweight champion. So Cowboy puts people on the map for sure too, not just Conor. So yeah, Cowboy is the guy who I would like to see next against Conor. Above all, I know he on a lot of people's list he wouldn't be number one. Number one on my list all day. And Conor recently said on Twitter he would fight Cowboy, especially after how good he did in Hernandez fight. Sorry about the brief pauses in these videos, guys. I'm here watching my daughter. She's out eating some SpaghettiOs and she keeps yelling out "Daddy" and "Daddy." So if you hear a baby in the background, that's why I had a little bit of time on my hands while she wanted to get something to eat and watch some cartoons. So I said, why not kill it with a UFC video? Something I've been thinking about for a long time. I'm always waiting for Conor to come back. Whether I hate him or loves him at the time, it's a love-hate relationship with me as a fan personally. I always just want to see him fight because he is a really good fighter. Number 4, a guy Conor McGregor beat the brakes off. Absolutely owned when they fought. People say he wasn't the same fighter that he is now, but Conor McGregor isn't the same fighter either. He's advanced a lot too, even though he didn't look that good in his last fight. Max Holloway, he's not Khabib, he's Max Holloway. And I think his style plays right into Conor's hands. He's a volume striker that wants to like wear you down, hit you with a lot of shots, eventually wear you down and open you up and get his openings. Against Conor, that's not going to work because he's too good of a counter striker and his power is too much. He showed that in the first Holloway fight. I think Holloway could survive to a decision again, even though it would be 5 rounds. And maybe Conor's gas tank, Holloway could look good in the 4th and 5th, maybe steal the rounds. Don't see him beating Conor no matter what. People say, oh, he could take him to the ground. Conor took Max Holloway to the ground with a torn ACL and completely controlled the top game. Who else has he done that against? Like, especially elite fighters. Conor controlled the top game, controlled the jiu-jitsu, controlled the wrestling. Absolutely controlled it with a torn ACL. So I'd have to give Conor that fight. I like Holloway. I'm not a huge fan of him. I like him, but I could pick Conor over him 100 out of 100 times, me personally. His record is 20 wins, 3 losses, 0 losses, 0 no contests to draw. He got no contests to draws. His last 5 fights, he had a great win over Brian Ortega, TKO, by doctor stoppage, round 4, still considered a TKO. TKO'd Jose Aldo twice in the 3rd round. The first fight was really close because Jose Aldo could have kind of understood what Max Holloway was about, but then Max Holloway got him down, got the top of him, just beat the hell out of him at ground and pound, got it finished. And the second fight was a lot less close because Holloway just dominated. Except for the first round, Jose Aldo looked good. The second 2 rounds, Holloway just dominated, outclassed him on the feet, eventually got the TKO. And there's a fight before that, he beat Anthony Pettis, who didn't make weight, looked really bad at 145. You could tell he's almost like TJ at 125. He just wasn't meant to cut 145. He looked terrible to me against Holloway personally, and Holloway beat him. And Holloway also beat Ricardo Lamas in a deadly fight. If you haven't seen this fight, the last 10 seconds of the fight, they both point at the ground and say, let's go, start swinging for the fences. Holloway won decision in that. But props to Lamas, lots of heart in that fight. He's on a 13-fight win streak. His last loss was to Conor, like about 5 years ago or something. He's the current featherweight champ, and he wanted to fight Khabib. He signed to fight Khabib. He did a press conference with Khabib, just couldn't properly make weight. The doctors wouldn't let him cut any more weight, so that's what happened there. And the last fight I'd like to see, he's more of a recent guy who's come back around, but he does got a good record and he does got a good claim to a title fight, and he's talked a lot of shit that I sure would bother any fighter, and he's made some good points, is Al Iaquinta. I'd like to see Conor fight Al Iaquinta, but I don't know who I'd like to see win. I like both of them, but I like Iaquinta a lot more lately, and he seems a lot more real to me. He isn't a fighter that seems to like do it for the money or want to be all classy. He's just a straight up fighter, and his Kevin Lee fight was awesome. He was losing a little bit on the ground, but he was always in the fight. In the last 2 rounds, he just beat the shit out of Kevin Lee. He has 2 wins over Kevin Lee now. He has wins over big names. When a name after the last 5 he's beaten might surprise some people. And yeah, he's talked a lot of stuff about Conor. He was at the post-fight recently between Henry Cejudo and TJ Dillashaw, and he called out Conor there. He's called out Conor in almost every interview he's been in. He said he wants that fight. He wants the big fight that's going to vault him to the title fight. I don't think he'd beat Khabib. He's already lost to Khabib on 10 days' notice. He's one of Khabib's toughest opponents. Khabib says personally it's his toughest fight. But I don't think it was. I think Gleison Tibau was Khabib's toughest fight. If anybody hasn't seen that, that's a disputed win. The commentators, Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg, thought Gleison Tibau won. So as much as Khabib talks about being the most dominant fighter in the world, a lot of people think Gleison Tibau beat him. But other than that, yeah, for sure, Al Iaquinta was definitely his next toughest fight. So that's what I'd like to see Conor fight next. In his last 5, that's what I'd like to see Conor fight last out of all these people. But this is one of the people who Conor could definitely fight next, and people would love to see fight next, and it would be a good draw. His last 5 fights, he's beaten Kevin Lee by decision. Khabib, he lost to Khabib by decision. Beat the brakes off Diego Sanchez, K'd him round 1. Shout out to Diego Sanchez, warrior, love the guy. Should have retired long ago. but still a warrior, former tough winner. Also, never mind, sorry. I was going to say somebody else was a tough winner on that list, but I got confused just in. And he beat Masvidal, split decision, very disputed decision, where he said, "You going to boo me? You going to boo me? You going to boo Rage now?" If you missed that, really good, really good. There's a couple memes about, a couple gifs. I love it. How dare you boo me in New York, motherfuckers. Joe Lozon, TKO round 2. That was the other fight he had to beat him out. He beat the brakes off Joe Lozon to TKO round 2. Overall MMA record 14-4-1, so he got a bit not as much experience as these other fighters in MMA and UFC. But a big part of that is he's been injured a lot the past 2 years. We haven't seen much rage now, and lately he hasn't been so raging. He's just been best con, just calling people out, wanting to fight. Like, Conor is going to fucking eat him alive at a press conference because he is a real fighter. He's a dude. But they call him Rage now for a reason. If you get under his skin, he starts getting pissed and starts getting all emotional and cursing. We've seen it happen in the Masvidal fight at the end of it. And I think Conor's mental warfare would fucking eat that guy alive. So that's why I think he might lose against Conor. But in a straight-up fight where both of them are just straight minded, ready to go, Al does have the style to beat him because he's like Max Holloway. He can volume strike you, but he got fucking bombs too, and he's a savage. And he's out of that Longo camp with Wadman in him. He's like a New York, tough, sick fucking guy. Love Raging Al though, man. Like, especially when he's raging. You gotta start raging again. He shouldn't be as nice as he is. He needs to start fucking going crazy on people, going ham on people. I thought he was going to go ham on Kevin Lee in round 5, the way he looked in that fight. He was throwing those big old fucking overhand bombs. He was landing with them, but he was just so disciplined. Technical, I guess he didn't want to get caught or didn't want nothing bad to happen to him and lose the fight. But yeah, that's another fight I'd like to see. Anyways, those are the top 5 fights I'd like to see Conor McGregor have. I just had to speed through this, guys. Sorry, this video is a bit quick, a bit choppy. My daughter's out there yelling out, "Dad, Dad, Dad," so I got to go out with her now and watch some cartoons. Maybe pop the headphones in and listen to an MMA podcast if I get the chance, if she's calm enough. Who knows? But those are my top 5 Conor McGregor fights I'd like to see. And I'd also like to see Conor McGregor stop being such a fucking douchebag lately. Maybe try to keep it a bit more classy. If he does fight any of these guys, don't talk about the religion. Don't talk about the family. Because when you get the head beat off you and you get embarrassed in front of the world, it makes it look even worse. And it just gives the haters a reason to pick you apart. And it loses you a lot of fans, in my opinion, unless they're completely belligerent, ignorant fans. But anyways, that's the top 5 fights Conor McGregor should have. You'll probably see. And I can almost guarantee you one of these fights you'll see within the next year, barring a suspension. This is Mr. Average UFC fan here. Scotty2 Hockey might drop a hockey video later. If you like this video, like and subscribe for some more MMA talk, MMA debate. Stay tuned to this channel. Subscribe. There'll be plenty more videos to come. I try and keep about 2 or 3 up a day. I'm getting a better setup in the background. I'm going to get some UFC posters in the background. And I'm going to get some more Habs and hockey posters for my other corner. And I'm going to set up a little office in here with a little desktop and a webcam. Keep it a bit more professional where I'm not moving around so much in the video. Because I'm a pretty antsy guy. Especially when I'm talking about my passions, which is MMA, hockey. Love playing hockey. Have never fought MMA, but love watching MMA. Those are my passions in life besides my daughter, my family, and working. But anyways, guys, hope you like this video. Like and subscribe to the channel. The more the merrier. Feel free to leave a comment or like. Bye.